man who gave the world A Christmas Carol, the warmest story ever written about kindness, once lived alone while his entire family was locked inside a prison. The man who created Oliver Twist knew what it meant to be hungry, ashamed, and invisible. And the man we now call the greatest novelist of the Victorian age never stopped being haunted by the boy he once was. This is the story of Charles Dickens and how his greatest novels were born directly from trauma, ambition, and relentless moral anger. Charles Dickens was born in 1812 in Portsmouth, England, into a family that believed fiercely in success but never quite achieved it. His father, John Dickens, was charming, hopeful, and disastrously bad with money. Dickens did not grow up poor. He grew up afraid of becoming poor. And when he was 12 years old, that fear became reality. John Dickens was arrested for debt and sent to prison. Charles was removed from school and sent to work 11-hour days in a blacking factory, pasting labels onto bottles for a few shillings a week. Here is the detail that rarely gets emphasized. Dickens lived alone. His family stayed inside the prison. He visited them weekly, carrying shame heavier than his wages. The single year created Oliver Twist. When Oliver finally dares to ask for food and says, "Please, sir, I want some more," he's not being rebellious. He's being human. Victorian readers were shocked, not because Oliver was rude, but because Dickens exposed a system so cruel that hunger itself was treated as a crime. Dickens makes the accusation explicit when he writes that society decided the poor should choose between being starved by a gradual process in the house or by a quick one out of it. This is not exaggeration. This is memory. Dickens never forgot that year. In fact, he tried to erase it. He rarely spoke of it, even to his wife. But he could not erase it from his writing. Years later, Dickens wrote David Copperfield, the novel he called his favorite child. This was not coincidence. David Copperfield is Dickens writing himself into fiction. A neglected boy, sent to work, humiliated, yet clinging to imagination as survival. The novel opens with one of the most revealing lines Dickens ever wrote. Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by someone else, these pages must show. This is not just David speaking. This is Dickens asking whether suffering can ever be redeemed. Before darkness dominated his fiction, however, Dickens discovered something else: laughter. The Pickwick Papers made him famous almost overnight. Readers waited anxiously for each installment. Crowds argued over characters as if they were real people. For the first time in history, a novelist became a mass celebrity. But the humor of the Pickwick Papers is not shallow. It is protective. Dickens learned how early that laughter could shield people from despair. When he jokes that if there were no bad people, there would be no good lawyers. He's already sharpening satire beneath comedy. Humor became his doorway to influence. With fame came power, and Dickens used it. He began investigating real institutions. In researching Nicholas Nickleby, Dickens exposed abusive Yorkshire schools where children were beaten, starved, and abandoned. The novel caused national outrage. Some schools closed. Fiction had achieved what reports could not. Dickens attacks not cruelty alone, but society's resistance to change. Writing. It is a terrible thing to think how many people there are who are afraid of new ideas. His anger only deepened. In Bleak House, Dickens turned his fury on the legal system itself. The endless case of Jarndyce, and Jarndyce becomes a symbol of justice delayed until it destroys life. Dickens describes the Court of Chancery as a place which gives to moneyed might the means abundantly of wearing out the right. Law, in Dickens's vision, does not protect the vulnerable. It exhausts them. Then came A Christmas Carol. Written in 1843 during financial strain and personal unrest, the novella was both a moral manifesto and a lifeline. Scrooge is not merely a miser. He is Dickens's fear of emotional isolation. When Scrooge finally declares, "Mankind was my business," Dickens distilled his entire philosophy into one sentence. Not punishment, not charity, responsibility. The book saved Dickens financially and permanently reshaped how Christmas itself was imagined. Yet, as Dickens preached warmth to the world, his private life fractured, his marriage collapsed, fame exhausted him. He pushed himself harder, giving public readings where he did not simply read his novels, he performed them, screaming, weeping, becoming every character. Doctors begged him to stop. In 1865, Dickens survived a horrific train crash. He helped the wounded and crawled back into the wreckage to retrieve his manuscript. After the night, he never was the same. Anxiety, hallucinations, declining health. But still, he worked. Because Dickens feared one thing more than death: stopping. His final great novel, Great Expectations, is the most merciless self-critical and destructive novel. Pip believes wealth will make him worthy. Dickens was believed the same. The novel exposes ambition as both necessary and corrupting. When Pip confesses, "I loved her against reason, against promise, against peace, against hope," Dickens reveals how desire, status, and self-deception intertwine. It is a novel of a man who achieved everything and discovered its cost. Charles Dickens died in 1870 at 58, leaving the mystery of Edwin Drood unfinished. He asked for a quiet burial. Instead, the nation placed him in Westminster Abbey. Why? Because Dickens did something no writer before him had done. He turned private pain into public conscience. He made entertainment a vehicle for reform. He forced society to feel what it preferred not to see. As Dickens himself wrote, "Suffering has been stronger than all other teaching." That is why, 2 centuries later, we still call injustice Dickensian. Not because he invented suffering, but because he refused to let the world ignore it. Stay tuned for more of such great stories on literature.